Okay, so in today's lecture, we're going to be talking about command line arguments, and I'll begin briefly by pointing out the command line arguments. So what are they and where are they? And then we'll look at the purpose. Why would you use command line arguments? And then we'll see how we could enter command line arguments in BlueJ. It's a little artificial, but you can do it. And then we'll end by looking at actual command line arguments on the command line. So command line arguments are really intended to be used and are often used when you're running code at the command line. Okay. So what are command line arguments? Here I'm showing in red the method header for the main method, public static void main, and then between parentheses we have an array of strings called args. And what this means is that when you execute your code and the computer executes, so it finds the main method and it executes it, you can in fact pass input to your main method. And those inputs are known as, or they are called, command line arguments. If you think of the term command line arguments, these are arguments, just like our actual arguments. They are actual arguments that are entered at or entered from the command line. Hence, they are command line arguments. So what is, so we'll talk about in BlueJ, how would you pass in command line arguments, and then we'll look at the actual command line. But let's stop first and talk about why. Why would I want to pass an input to my main method? What might be the purpose of that? Okay, so basically the purpose is to pass to your program information that is going to affect how the program is executed. Examples include file names. File names are one of the most common types of command line arguments. So for example, in my other class, I'm teaching artificial intelligence. For their homework assignment, they were writing a computer program that could solve Sudoku puzzles. And they had a command line argument, which was the file name of the Sudoku file. Okay, so each Sudoku puzzle was represented in a file, and the program would get the file name, open the file, run the student code, and then display the completed Sudoku puzzle. Okay, so in that case, the command line argument was the name of the file. And in fact, it was a little bit more. It was the location and name of the file. So again, in that case, the purpose of the file name is we want to influence, or we want to pass information to the program. In particular, we want to say it's this Sudoku puzzle file that I want you to run. Now, up until this point in time, in our class, we've been using a scanner, and we love Scanner, and I love Scanner. It's a great class, and it allows us to write really nice interactive programs. However, oftentimes for a computer scientist, when you're running code, you really want to automate your code. You want to make your code independent of you. You want to write code that you just have to type in a command, hit enter, and it will just automate and do everything and then give you the output. What that means is oftentimes you don't want to use a scanner, because a scanner requires me to run the program and then sit there and type in, here's my file name, here's the image, here's what I want. So whereas for our purposes, the scanner is great because it's wonderful for interactive programs, for games, for example. For other types of computation, there's actually a preference for just automation. And so in that case, instead of having a scanner where I would type in the location of the file and the name of the file, it would be nice if I could just pass this in at the beginning and then just execute my code and it runs all the way to the end. Another purpose are known as flags. So by flags, what I mean is oftentimes people will pass indicators or little options. You can choose options in a program, and these are called flags. One of the most common flags is known as verbose. So I might run a program and I might set a little flag that tells the program, I want you to be very verbose, meaning I want you to print everything out so I can see every step that you're doing. Or you can pass a flag that says, don't be verbose, meaning turn off all print statements. I just want to run this and I don't want to clutter up my screen. So those are the sorts of like pieces of information you might want to pass to a program, a file name, different flags, and we'll see some examples of these. All of this is information I want to pass at the very beginning to influence or to affect how the program is executed. And there's a preference for automation. I'll just give you this information up front and then you run, over using a scanner where I have to sit there and type it all in. Okay, so that's basically the purpose. Okay, so let's look at how you would do this in BlueJ. So BlueJ, you can type your input between the curly brackets. Okay, so I have written in BlueJ a program here called command line args. It's quite simple. Here's a for loop that iterates over the args array and prints out each string. So it's pretty simple. I'm just printing out the command line arguments. Okay, so in BlueJ, the way that you would pass command line arguments to the main method is when you right click and choose main, it's this screen. So instead of hitting OK, these curly brackets are basically an initializer list. And so we can go ahead and put inside of here, you know, like hello and big bear and -4, false. Okay, so we can enter some arguments here, hit OK, and there we go. Okay, so my program is printing out, right, these command line arguments for you. Now I'm actually a little curious if I have to use double quotes. What if I said hello? Is that okay? No, okay. So in BlueJ, at least they have to be strings, so you have to put the double quotes around them. And there you go. Okay, so in BlueJ, if you wanted to enter information into your program for the command line arguments, that's how you would do it. Let's actually jump to the command line. That's really where command line arguments are actually of use. Okay, so this is my command line. This on a Mac, it's called Terminal. And I think on a Windows machine, it's probably called like command prompt or command. Basically what I have here, this is known as the command line. I enter commands here and then the commands are executed. From the command line, I can basically do everything that I can do with my mouse and the Finder. Okay, so you're probably more used to interacting with your computer using your mouse here, using Finder, clicking on things, double clicking on things, searching for stuff, right? You're probably more used to using what's known as the GUI, the graphical user interface, your mouse, your keyboard, you're clicking, double clicking buttons all over. The command line is an alternative way of interacting with your computer, and it's just a text interface. So you just type text and execute that text, execute those commands. And this is probably, you know, if you were taking this class 20 years ago, this is basically what you would have interacted with all semester. BlueJ didn't exist, and you would have the command line. And when I was taking computer science, instead of BlueJ, we used a program called Emacs. Okay, so I typed a command Emacs, hit enter, and here you go. And this is what you would have used. I'm going to go through and kind of run some commands at the command line and show you some things that you can do with it. If you're on a Windows machine, there is a command prompt for you. There are commands, but they're different from these commands. And you'll have to kind of translate what I'm doing into commands for the Windows command prompt. Okay, so what is this? It's just a blank screen kind of floating in space here. We can type pwd for print working directory, and that tells me where I am. So right now I'm in users AL chambers. I can type ls for list, so list all the files. And we see these are the files. Actually, these are directories. This is the same as if I had just gone here. Okay, so you'll see that applications, desktop documents, downloads, applications, desktop document downloads. These are the same, right? The only thing that differs is just the user interface. Here it's your Finder versus here I'm at the command line, but I can do the same sorts of things. Okay, so I'm gonna move to the directory where my BlueJ code is living. So I do that with the CD command, which stands for change directory. So I want to change directory to documents, teaching, workspace, CS1, and let's stop there. So hit enter. Okay, so here's where I am. Now, I use the command line so often that I've just kind of memorized my whole file system. I know where everything is, but you can always type ls to see what the files are in the current directory. Okay, I want to go to semester's worth, chapter 8, class, chapter 8. Okay, so here's the same directory. We can go back to BlueJ. You see all of these Java files, and they're all shown here. Here's our command line arguments.java. Command line arguments.class is the compiled version, and I'm actually going to get rid of that. So RM stands for remove. The asterisk here is called a wildcard. So I'm saying remove any file that matches this pattern. The pattern is the wildcard stands for anything. It could be anything. So any file that ends with .class, go ahead and remove it. So if I hit enter and then type ls again, you'll notice that all of the .class files have been removed. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to compile my Java program, so my command line arguments file. So Java C is the Java compiler, right? Command line args.java. Okay, interestingly enough, this is an example of a command line argument. Okay, so if the next 2 minutes don't make sense to you, you can ignore it. But I think it is interesting to point out, Java C is a program. It's a computer program. And I'm passing to that computer program a file name. The file is command line args.java. This is a command line argument. Believe it or not, this program here has a main method, and the command line argument being passed into the main method, so inside of its args array, is what I just typed here. So here's an example where I want a command line argument. So I'm saying run this program on this file, and I'm passing in the file as a command line argument. Okay, if that didn't make sense, it doesn't matter. Just skip that part of the video. Okay, so I'm going to compile this. We see now that there's a command line args.class. This is no longer human readable. Okay, so command line args.java is my human readable source code. Command line args.class is this kind of intermediate bytecode compiled version that's kind of human readable, but mostly just gibberish. Okay, in order to execute that, we'd say Java and then command line args. And then here's where we would enter the command line arguments. At the command line, you don't have to use double quotes. You can just type whatever you want. So I could say 4.0, false, -3, what? And that gets these inputs here get packaged together into our string array and get passed to main. And then you're seeing my program print them out. Okay, so the command line arguments are 4.0, false, -3, and what? And we could just keep having fun. And there we go. Okay, so basically to enter the command line arguments, you would type them separated by a space on the command line. They get packaged up and passed to your main method, and I'm showing them printing out here. Okay, so I'm just going to show you at this point, I guess I could jump back here. So BlueJ, you would use an initializer list and you have to enter the strings between the curly brackets. You do have to use the double quotes. On the actual command line, you would simply open up your command prompt or terminal. So command prompt is what it's called in Windows machine, terminal for Mac. You would change to the directory where your Java files are, and then you would run your program. Java, this is the name of your Java file, whatever that is, and then you could pass in your arguments. You don't need to have double quotes. As long as they're separated by spaces, it's sufficient. Okay, so I want to just spend the rest of this lecture, so like the next 3 to 5 minutes, and I want to just show you different examples of command line arguments. And I think some of these examples might be confusing, or you may not be able to understand every detail of every example, and that's okay. Just like let it run through you. Basically, I just want to show you different things that I think are interesting. Whatever you're able to understand, you're able to understand, but don't stress about it too much. Okay, so I'm gonna change to my desktop. And I created a file here called names. In fact, I have a lot of random stuff. I have some recipes on my desktop. We can go here. Okay, so I've got some recipes. I've got some screenshots. I don't know why I have so many screenshots, whatever. Okay, so this is my desktop. I created a file called names, and we can open it up. So I'll use Emacs. Again, that Emacs is like BlueJ, but BlueJ from like 20 to 50 years ago. Okay, so I'm going to open up Emacs, and let's see. Yes. Okay, I'm going to open up Emacs, and I'm going to pass it this file I created called names. Now, again, this is actually an example of a command line argument, right? I'm running a program called Emacs, and I'm passing to it a file called names. Technically, that's a command line argument. Okay, so what I did is I just went to Zoom, and I got, I just grabbed some names. I just looked at, I think this was the last class period we had, in fact, and I just didn't attend. I was doing attendance, so I just grabbed some names. Okay, so these are our names. These are your names, right? So here's names of people. Some of them are uppercase, some of them are lowercase. Basically in Zoom, whatever your name is that you have, that's what's showing up here. Okay, here's some names, and I called it names. Now, what I want to do is I want to sort this. It'd be great if I could get that list, but in alphabetical order. Right now, it's just in order of who showed up first to Zoom, so it's not really that useful. Okay, there's a lovely program that you can run from the command line called sort. And I can pass it a command line argument. Okay, so I'm going to run this program called sort, and I'm passing in a command line argument, which are the names. Okay, it's the file where I'm storing my names. Okay, so sort will take in the file name, take in the command line argument. It'll open up the file, read all the names in, and then sort it in alphabetical, and then it prints it to the console. It's going to print it back to the terminal. Okay, so here we go. So here's the names in my file, but now they're sorted alphabetically. Okay, but the only problem is, notice that lowercase. So if your name was lowercased, so Curtis here should have been up in the C's, and so should Jessica, right, be up here, and Rowan, but they were lowercased. And so it looks like this program is putting all the uppercase names and then the lowercase names. Not quite as useful. Okay, so it would be really nice if it sorted it and it ignored capitalization. Okay, well, in fact, you can pass a flag, you can pass an option to the sort command to tell it, hey, please ignore capitalization. Okay, so I could say sort -f names. So -f, oftentimes with flags, like verbose or here, they start with a dash. So here -f means sort it, but ignore capitalization. So now I'm actually passing in not one, but 2 command line arguments. The first command line argument is a flag. The second command line argument is the name of my file. Okay, and there we go. So now when it sorts it, we've got the A's, right, the C's, and both uppercase C's and lowercase C's, right, are being sorted together, and it's really ignoring capitalization. So here's an example of a program called sort where it takes in command line arguments. Now, if you could imagine this program, but with a scanner instead, it wouldn't be nearly as convenient. So if I ran sort and then it popped up a console and it's like, hi, welcome to sort, enter the file, and I had to type names, right? And enter the flags, and I had to sit here and type them all, it would probably be a little bit more cumbersome. It's nice though, just to be able to specify at the beginning and to be able to just run it. Now, maybe this is not a convincing example because I guess regardless of whether you use command line arguments or the scanner, you have to do the same amount of typing. And this may blow your mind, it may not blow your mind. I can actually put this in a file and then just execute the file, and it will execute this command for me. Okay, so that goes back to the automation I was talking about. If you have a scanner, someone has to sit there and type in the information. At the command line, though, I actually could automate this even more by putting this in a file. It's called a bash script, a script file, and then just execute that file, and it'll execute this sort command for me. Okay, last but not least, okay, this sort command has lots of flags that you could pass in. And I don't have them memorized, but there's a program on my machine called man. And man is short for manual. And in particular, 20, 30, 40 years ago, if you're using the command line and you want to run a program like sort, and you want to know all the different options that you could pass as a command line argument, you would have had a book. You would have opened up a book, looked at the sort command, and it would say, okay, here's all the different flags and options. Now, I'm sure those books still exist, but no one wants to look it up in a book. So man is the digital version of that book, and man is short for manual. Okay, so this is a manual, and I'm going to pass to the manual sort. So when I execute this man program, it will find in the manual the sort command, and then it will print for me the kind of information about the sort command. Okay, so here we go. So this is the general commands manual. The name is sort, and it sorts or merges records of text and binary files. Here's a summary of all the command line options you could pass. So different flags that you could use include -B, or you could say -C or -C, right? Like each of these letters is its own flag that you could pass. You could pass -T and provide the name of a directory. You could pass in -O and provide the name of an output file. Well, that's fun. Let's do that. So let's say sort -F names -O output. Okay, so instead of printing to the console, it actually sent the output to this file I created. So now if we look, there's an output file, and I can open it up for you, and there you go. Okay, that's super convenient. So basically this is showing all the different flags that you could pass. You can say --help. That's a really nice command line argument. So you hit enter, and it gives you kind of a summary of how you use this program. You could say --version. Okay, so this is version 2.3 of this sort. Let's see what else we can do. And then down here, the description is like the long version, and it gives you as much information as you want. Earlier today, I opened this up, and here we go. So -F will convert all lowercase characters to their uppercase equivalent before comparison, that is before sorting. Okay, so there are a lot of different command line arguments, a lot of different flags. Ooh, sort in reverse order. Sorry, that's interesting. Sort -F, so ignore capitalization. -R, was it -R? I don't remember. What was that? Dictionary order. Oh no, yeah, -R, okay. So sort minus F minus R minus O output. Oh, there you go. It's in reverse order. That's pretty cool. I didn't know you could do that. That's nice. Okay. So anyways, I just wanted to show you that with command line arguments, really the sky is the limit. I mean, there's so many different types of command line arguments that you can have for a different program. Okay, I'm getting a little carried away, sorry. Okay, so that is that. So let's just do a quick recap. Not much to recap. Okay, so what are command line arguments? They are arguments provided to your program at the command line. Those arguments are packaged into an array called args. So the purpose is to pass to your program information that affects how you want the program to run. Typical command line arguments include the location and names of files and different flags. And we saw lots of examples of that. In BlueJ, you can use command line arguments. It's a little clunky and a little, I guess it's not that bad. You can do it. You would just enter them between the curly brackets and don't forget the double quotes. But really, command line arguments are meant to be used at the command line. That's why they're called command line arguments. And there you would open up a command prompt or terminal, change to whichever directory has the program in it that you want to run. And then when you run the program, you supply the command line arguments, and they just have to be separated by space, but you don't need to put the quotes. And then last but not least, we saw lots of examples of me at the command line calling a program and then passing in either file name or different flags. And that is that. Okay, so that's basically it, a very short lecture. To be honest, we won't use command line arguments during the rest of the semester just because we don't really use the command line. But it's good to cover it because at this point, you now understand or should understand every concept kind of displayed here in the method header. So we know what public is. Our last lecture, we talked about static. We know what void is. This is the name of the method, and now these are the command line arguments. So it only took 11 weeks, but hey, you finally got there. Okay, that is that.